Just a reminder that when you give our videos a thumbs up or you leave a comment, that signals the algorithm at YouTube that people are engaged in our channel. And so YouTube consequently will promote our channel. That's one of the ways you can help. All right, what about the traits of brainy Aspies? That is people with high functioning autism. Now, we've talked about this a couple times in the past, but we're going to drill down on a couple more elements. Some of them are reviewed. For example, number one is what we call Doodle focusing. I remember talking about this maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, but one of the signs of somebody who is highly intelligent is they like to doodle. Now, we wonder why that is, and from what I understand, it is a way of expressing our thoughts while we are paying attention so that we are able to do both at the same time. So you're listening, for example, to a classroom lecture. The teacher is explaining whatever, and you appear to be taking notes. You're doing little doodles on your notepad or whatever, and that helps you to think. It helps you to focus. It helps you to concentrate. I know that a lot of times when I am listening to something and I want to focus, I want to pay attention. If I just sit there and listen, what happens is my mind begins to wander. But if I take a pen, take a piece of paper, maybe a pencil, and I just start writing quickly what is being said, or maybe draw little circles or little funny faces or whatever, I can't not listen to what is being said. I don't know why that is, but I do know that is one of the traits of people who are highly intelligent. And we're talking specifically about people with autism. Number two is what I call daydream focus. People who are highly intelligent, they have an active brain. So if you're doodling, that indicates that you have an active brain and it's being expressed with a pen and paper. But if you are daydreaming, you're probably not paying attention to what is being said. So that is one of the reasons that I like to write, because if I'm not doodling, if I'm not taking scribbly notes or whatever, then I'm daydreaming. You know, if you are a brainy person, that means your brain is engaged. Your brain is active. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how people can just sit down and listen to a teacher, listen to a lecture, listen to a sermon, and somehow absorb it and pay attention. I don't know. I can't do it. But then again, you know, if I go to a movie and it's dark, and who doodles while they're watching the movie? Probably nobody. Who takes notes? Nah, nobody. But what I find happens when I go to a movie, I fall asleep. Doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter how exciting it is, doesn't matter how good the screenplay is, doesn't matter who the actor is, I just fall asleep. I don't know why that is. Few exceptions to that, but people sometimes ask, what movie have you watched? Well, I could ask you the question, what movie have you watched that you would watch several times? It was so engaging, so interesting that you like to watch it over and over and over again. You know, I thought about that. I can remember watching Rain Man. Remember the movie with Dustin Hoffman and what's his name, Tom Cruise? Now that movie I watched several times because the topic is autism. And I find it engaging, and I always learn a few things that I just find it fascinating that whoever did the screenplay understood elements of autism. So I learn a few things every time I watch it. But outside of that, daydreaming means my brain is active. When I go to movies, I don't even daydream. I just fall asleep. Sit in a sermon, you know, somebody preaching, my mind just takes off, goes somewhere else. Or the problem with falling asleep in church is I tend to snore, and that can be really embarrassing, particularly when the preacher calls you out, tells you to knock it off. Number three is self-reflection. Self-reflection is a trait of people who tend to be brainy. That is, we are introspective. We think about our thoughts. Lower primates, it seems, have a difficult time thinking about what they're thinking about. And the farther you go down the, quote, evolutionary scale, unquote, you may not be an evolutionist, but you know what I'm talking about, the farther down you go, The critters just don't think about what they're thinking about. They are moved primarily by just nature. They have a DNA that tells them to do this. You know, butterflies congregate in Mexico somewhere. How do they know that? Well, they didn't think about it. They didn't say, you know, let's just check our passport and fly down to Mexico. Now they just do it. You know, it's nature. But those of us who are humans, you know, up on the top of that scale, we think about what we're thinking about. And it seems the smarter you are, the more you think about what you think about. So if you're thinking about what you're thinking about, and you're very conscious, you're very introspective, that's an indication that you're a brainy Aspie. You're a brainy person with Asperger syndrome. The next point is creativity. You probably thought this one was going to come up, but creativity simply means that you have the capacity to imagine, so you get outside the box. Now, some people say, some smart people, they say are kind of messy because they don't like the box. That's not necessarily true of people with autism, because we like things organized and straight. But even so, we can still think creatively. We can still think outside the box, even when we are inside the box. Years ago, I saw an advertisement of a man who was standing by a window in an office, and he's just staring out into space. You know, whatever was outside the window, it was like a skyscraper, you know. And he was looking out at the skyline. And the caption said, you know, why is this company paying this guy $100,000 to stay out the window? And that was back in a day when $100,000 was a lot of money. And the answer was kind of obvious. He was a creative thinker. So, you know, you see people with Asperger syndrome, with autism, and they seem to be staring off into space. You know, they are engaging their creative mind. They're daydreaming. They're not doodling, or maybe they're doodling. Call it mind doodling. I guess that's one way you could say it. But intelligent people tend to be creative. We design things, you know. Now, if you stop and think about all the inventions that have enhanced the lives of virtually everybody, and you go back and find out who was it that created that thing, well, you find number one is typically they're highly intelligent. And number two, you find that many of them, not all of them, have autism or Asperger syndrome. There is something about people with autism, with Asperger syndrome, who like to get away from others. And while they're away from others, that allows them to think. So which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do they get away from others so they can think, or do they think so they can get away from others? They want to get alone so they can think, or maybe they just don't like others, and since they're alone, since they're by themselves, they may as well go ahead and think. I think they're just thinkers, and so they prefer to be alone. Number 5, speaking of thinking, is they are late night thinkers. You would be hard-pressed, at least this has been my experience. I'm nearly 70 years old. I've been going through this thing called life for nearly 7 decades. I've learned a thing or two. And I'd be impressed to find, I would be hard-pressed rather to find a person with autism who sleeps at night. You know, just every night go to bed at what, 9, 10 o'clock and sleep for 8 hours. I'm sure they're out there. Maybe you're one of them, but I'm not. You know, I've learned that it's tough when you have a job to do this. But I've finally surrendered to this. I mean, after years of trying to get a good night's sleep, when I'm tired, I go to bed. Doesn't matter what time of day it is. What does this position of the sun have to do with anything? If you're tired and sleepy, go to bed. And one of the most difficult things to do is to do one of these videos while you're tired, or to do the prep for one of these videos when you're tired, because you can't think. I like to take a nap, so when I wake up, brush my teeth. I got the cleanest teeth in the world because I take several naps a day, but I can think, you know. So brainy people, brainy Aspies, brainy people with autism are those individuals who tend to stay up at night. People call them night owls. Call it what you want, but they stay up at night and they think. It's not just up to be up, but they may engage with the internet. They may go to YouTube. And this is a learning opportunity when you don't have a lot of noise and distractions around you, so you dig in and you learn something. Number 6 is they don't like odd noises. Brainy people with autism don't like to hear those weird noises that people make with their mouths. Speaking of being up late learning, I was doing this last night. I think it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I can't remember. I should have looked it up, but I can't remember the video that I was watching. And this guy who was talking, he had this thing where every minute or so he would make like a click with his tongue or something, the smack with his lips. I don't know what that was, but it just absolutely positively drove me crazy. There's another person I was watching, and she was giving a lecture. I think it was on autism. And every sentence she said, or sometimes she would say it every other or several times in a sentence. She would say something, then and say something, and then That was so annoying. And finally, I wrote a comment. I said, great lecture, but why do you keep saying every few words? And then some people replied to my comment, and they said, we didn't notice that till you told us. So the point is, apparently, I noticed it, but nobody else did. The speaker obviously didn't notice it, or she would do it. I just did it. We call those vocal fill-ins. There's actually a technical name for it. I can't remember what it is. But we don't like those odd noises that people make with their mouths, particularly when they're eating. Have you ever had dinner with somebody and they do this thing with their fork where they scrape it on their teeth? That drives you crazy, right? Well, that's a sign that you are a brainy Aspie, or maybe just brainy. Number 7 is self-talk. We've talked about this in previous videos, but self-talk, what we mean by that is, we just talk to ourselves out loud. And that's kind of frustrating because sometimes you get caught doing that and people will respond to you. And I know a lot of times I just say things out loud and maybe I shouldn't say those things, And sometimes it's self-reflection. I'm saying something about myself that is not positive. And my wife will answer me. I wasn't talking to you, I was talking to me. She doesn't understand that, I guess, because normally when people talk, you think, and there's no one else around, there's only 2 people in the house. Well, they must be talking to me. So why did you say that to me? They don't necessarily understand, but yeah, self-talk is an indication that you have an active brain. And by the way, when you say things out loud, it's easier to remember. Now, when you study a foreign language, I don't know how they know this, but they say that if you will say the same word, the new word that you're learning in a foreign language, 60 times, that's what it takes to make it stick in your brain. So you just repeat it over and over and over again. So self-talk, something akin to that we're learning. We are putting something, engaging something, and we are storing it away in our brain by saying it out loud. Number 8 is we just kind of prefer to be alone. Well, we being people with autism, but people who are brainy autistics, brainy Aspies, we just like to be alone. Why is that? I don't know. But maybe it was 10,000 years ago or 100,000 years ago, whatever, that our ancestors were alone at night, where we like to stay up at night. And you're surrounded by these predators, these critters who find you just to be another meal in the food chain. So these people, these individuals who stayed up late at night had to be smart. So they would detect the predator who was in the dark. Well, the ones who weren't smart, they were, some lion's dinner, some bear's dinner, whatever. So they didn't survive to pass on their genes. But those who were smart, they survived. They passed on their genes. This is just hypothesis. I don't know if it's true or not. So that could explain why smart people like to stay up at night. Because, that's a trait they inherited. Number 9, this one may be a little bit surprising to some of you, but brainy people with Asperger syndrome tend to be sedentary. Now, as I was doing research on this and putting together my notes, I thought about the expression, the dumb jock or the dumb athlete, the guy who's really, really good at sports, but outside of that, he's not good at much of anything, especially academics. I'm not sure that's true across the board because I know a lot of athletes who are particularly highly intelligent individuals, but the idea is that people who are highly intelligent like to not be busy. Why is that? And particularly people with autism. They don't like to be physically active all the time. I mean, there's some people you can't stop them. They're just working, physically working. I love to work. I like to do stuff. But I also like to just stop and think, And I'm thinking the reason is because your brain uses up so many calories. So let's say that you, typical male, you use 2,000 calories. Your body burns 2,000 calories in a 24-hour period. Adult female, woman would burn fewer. But your brain uses up 400 to 500 calories a day. So if you're burning 2,000 calories a day, and 500 of those are going to your brain, just brain activity, that's about 25%, And if you are a woman, you're probably using even more than that. So why is it that brainy people prefer to be sedentary? It could be, and again, this is hypothesis. I don't know if it's true. But it could be because we just are inclined to preserve our thinking capacity. And yeah, sometimes you can think while you're active. In fact, if you're doing labor type work, sometimes you have to think when you're active. But by and large, people who are highly intelligent, who are brainy, prefer just, take a break so we can think about what we're going to do. And then we do it. What do you think? What am I missing here? If you can think of anything that I'm missing, you can put it in the comments section. We'd like to hear what you have to say. 2 rectangles on the screen. What that means is you can click on one of those so we can keep on talking together, keep on hanging out. But if not, thanks for stopping by and see y'all next time.